Manny was an 11-year-old boy who lived with his parents in a quiet suburban neighborhood. One fateful night, while his parents were away attending a late-night party, a group of ruthless burglars targeted their home. Little did they know that Manny was inside, quietly doing his homework in his bedroom. As the night grew darker, Manny heard strange noises downstairs. He knew something was wrong. Fear gripped his heart as he peeked through the crack in his bedroom door and saw shadows moving across the walls. The burglars had entered the house, and Manny knew he had to act quickly to save himself. With adrenaline rushing through his veins, Manny thought on his feet. He quietly crawled under his bed, trying not to make a sound. He hoped that the darkness would conceal him from the intruders. From his hiding spot, he could hear their footsteps and hushed whispers as they ransacked the house. Manny's heart pounded in his chest, and he tried his best to control his breathing. He knew that any noise could give away his location, and the consequences would be dire. In the midst of his fear, he remembered his parents' advice about staying calm in tough situations. Meanwhile, the burglars were growing increasingly frustrated. They knew someone had to be home because they had seen Manny's parents leave earlier that evening. They were determined to find whoever it was and make them reveal any hidden valuables. One of the burglars, a burly man with a menacing demeanor, took charge of the search. He ordered his accomplices to scour every room in the house thoroughly. "The little brat can't be far," he said with a sinister grin. Manny's heart sank as he heard the approaching footsteps getting louder and closer. He clutched his trembling hands tightly together, hoping and praying that he wouldn't be found. The sound of his own heartbeat filled his ears, and he tried to stay as silent as possible. Suddenly, Manny heard the sound of a creaking floorboard just outside his bedroom. The burglars were getting closer, and Manny felt a surge of panic. His mind raced, searching for a solution to escape this dire situation. As if by a stroke of luck, Manny remembered a small crawl space behind his closet. It was an old and dusty hiding spot that he and his friends used to play in when they were younger. It was risky, but he had to try. He quietly slid out from under the bed and tiptoed to the closet. With trembling hands, he pulled aside clothes and shoes until he found the hidden entrance to the crawl space. Praying that it was still accessible, he squeezed himself into the confined space just in time as the bedroom door creaked open. The burglars entered the room, their flashlights scanning the area. Manny held his breath, praying that they wouldn't notice the crawl space door. The darkness and silence were his allies now, but he knew that any careless move could betray him. The burly leader of the burglars grunted, "No one's in here. Let's check the other rooms." Relieved, Manny waited until the sounds of footsteps faded away before he dared to breathe again. As the night wore on, Manny remained hidden in the crawl space, not daring to make a move. He couldn't risk leaving his hiding spot until he was sure the burglars had left for good. The minutes felt like hours, and he could still hear faint noises from downstairs. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the noises ceased, and Manny cautiously crawled out of the crawl space. The house was silent once again, but Manny knew he couldn't let his guard down just yet. He had to be certain the burglars were gone. Taking slow and deliberate steps, Manny made his way to his parents' bedroom. From the window, he saw a van parked outside, and he watched as it slowly drove away, fading into the night. It was a sign that the burglars had finally left his home. Relief washed over Manny, and he felt a mixture of gratitude and sheer luck. He knew he had narrowly escaped a dangerous situation, and his heart went out to those who weren't as fortunate. With a newfound strength, Manny vowed to find a way to keep himself and his family safe in the future. With the danger seemingly past, Manny knew he had to act quickly. He reached for his phone, which he had left on his bedside table, and dialed emergency services. The police were dispatched to his location, and within minutes, they arrived at his house. Manny explained everything to the police, recounting the details of the burglary and how he had managed to hide and escape detection. The officers commended his bravery and quick thinking, reassuring him that he had done the right thing by staying hidden and calling for help. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the burglars were part of a notorious gang responsible for a string of break-ins in the area. Their arrest brought a sense of relief to the community, knowing that they would no longer pose a threat. In the aftermath of the incident, Manny's parents were informed of what had occurred. They rushed back home, overwhelmed with concern and relief upon seeing their son unharmed. They embraced him tightly, grateful for his safety. Manny's story spread through the neighborhood, becoming a cautionary tale of the importance of home security and community vigilance. The incident prompted discussions about strengthening security measures and organizing neighborhood watch programs to ensure everyone's safety. The experience had a profound impact on Manny. He realized the importance of being prepared and knowledgeable about emergency procedures. He attended self-defense classes, learned basic first aid skills, and actively participated in his community's efforts to prevent crime. Over time, Manny became a role model for other children in the neighborhood. He shared his story, urging them to stay alert, trust their instincts, and seek help in times of danger. He used his experience to empower others, turning a terrifying ordeal into an opportunity for growth and resilience. As the years passed, Manny's bravery and determination stayed with him. He grew up to become a successful advocate for community safety, dedicating his life to helping others protect themselves and their loved ones. His story served as an inspiration to many, reminding them that even in the darkest of nights, one can find strength and emerge stronger. And so, the tale of Manny, the young boy who faced the perils of being alone at night, became a testament to the power of courage, resourcefulness, and the resilience of the human spirit. Chase was always a solitary person, finding comfort in the quietness of his own company. He embraced the solitude of the night, finding peace in its darkness. But one particular night, an unexplainable sense of unease settled in his heart, making him question his usual tranquility. Living in a small town surrounded by dense woods, Chase was accustomed to a peaceful and predictable life. However, on this night, the town seemed unusually deserted. The usually lively streets were empty, and a haunting silence enveloped everything around him. His footsteps echoed loudly in the darkness. With each step, Chase's heart quickened, a mix of fear and curiosity pulsating through his veins. The occasional flickering street lamp cast eerie shadows, playing tricks on his senses. Turning a corner, a whisper carried by the wind sent a chill down his spine, amplifying his apprehension. As he continued walking, his hand instinctively reached for his phone, seeking reassurance and a connection to the outside world. To his dismay, he discovered there was no signal, leaving him even more isolated and vulnerable. In the distance, a figure materialized under a flickering street lamp. Chase's heart skipped a beat, uncertain whether to approach or retreat. The figure seemed to beckon him forward, its features obscured by the shadows. Driven by curiosity, he cautiously ventured closer. As Chase closed the gap, his fear gave way to relief mixed with confusion. The figure turned out to be Mrs. Anderson, an elderly woman known in the town for living alone in a house near the edge of the woods. Her eyes were wide with fear, clutching her walking stick as if it were her only defense. "Mrs. Anderson, what are you doing out here at this hour?" Chase asked, his voice betraying a hint of worry. "I couldn't stay in my house, Chase," she replied, her voice trembling. "Something feels off tonight. I've been hearing strange noises, and I can't shake the feeling that someone or something is watching me." Chase's uneasiness grew deeper. If even Mrs. Anderson felt the same impending danger, then something truly unsettling must be happening. He couldn't leave her alone in her distress, so he made a decision. "Mrs. Anderson, come with me," Chase offered, extending his arm. "We can find safety together. I know a place where we can go." With reluctance, Mrs. Anderson took his arm, her frail fingers clutching tightly. They walked in silence, their footsteps resonating through the empty streets. The night seemed to grow darker with every passing minute, intensifying the sense of danger that hung in the air. Eventually, they reached an old abandoned church at the outskirts of town. Its weathered spire loomed ominously against the night sky. Chase cautiously pushed open the heavy wooden doors, leading them inside. The musty scent of aged books and decaying wood filled their nostrils. Inside the church, the faint glow of moonlight streamed through faded stained glass windows, casting an ethereal aura upon the empty pews. Chase guided Mrs. Anderson to a small room at the back, providing them a temporary refuge from the unknown. Closing the door, they shut themselves away from the outside world and the lurking perils. As they settled into the room, Chase's mind raced with questions. What had caused the sudden emptiness of the town? What were the origin of the eerie whispers and Mrs. Anderson's fears? And most importantly, would they make it through the night unscathed? Little did Chase know that the night held far more secrets and dangers than he could have ever imagined. The hours ahead would test their resilience as they confronted the true nature of their solitude in the darkness. The hours ticked away, and Chase and Mrs. Anderson remained confined within the small room of the abandoned church. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as they listened intently to the echoes of their own breathing. The silence of the night was suffocating, broken only by the distant howl of the wind. Suddenly, a soft scraping noise emerged from beyond the closed door. Chase and Mrs. Anderson exchanged alarmed glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. The sound grew louder, accompanied by shuffling footsteps that seemed to draw nearer. With bated breath, Chase quietly reached for a wooden plank that lay nearby, ready to defend themselves if necessary. Mrs. Anderson clutched her walking stick, her knuckles turning white with tension. They braced themselves for whatever awaited them on the other side of the door. As the door swung open, a wave of relief washed over them. Standing in the doorway was a disheveled man named David, who had been out searching for his missing daughter. He explained that the town had been evacuated due to a gas leak, and everyone had been instructed to leave immediately. However, David's daughter had gone missing in the chaos, and he was desperately searching for her. Realizing that they were not alone in their predicament brought both comfort and concern. Chase, Mrs. Anderson, and David joined forces, determined to find David's daughter and navigate the empty town together. They ventured cautiously through the abandoned streets, their footsteps echoing through the silence. The darkness seemed to swallow them, but their resolve to find the missing girl remained unwavering. They called out her name, their voices bouncing off the empty buildings, but there was no response. In their search, they discovered scattered belongings and signs of a hasty evacuation. The town that was once familiar had become an eerie ghost town, devoid of life and activity. The unease grew with each passing moment, amplifying their determination to find David's daughter and uncover the truth. As they neared the town square, their eyes were drawn to a flickering light in the distance. They quickened their pace, their hearts pounding in anticipation. The light led them to a small park, where they found the missing girl sitting alone on a bench, tears streaming down her face. Relief flooded over David as he rushed to embrace his daughter. She explained that she had become separated from him in the chaos and had taken refuge in the park, waiting for someone to find her. They were reunited at last, their family made whole again. The night slowly gave way to the rising sun, casting its golden glow upon the town. People began to trickle back, returning to their homes and embracing their loved ones. The true cause of the evacuation was revealed: a gas leak that had posed a serious threat to the residents' safety. Chase, Mrs. Anderson, and David became local heroes, celebrated for their bravery and resourcefulness during the challenging night. The town came together, grateful for the unity that had emerged from their shared ordeal. In the aftermath, Chase found solace in the bonds he had formed. He realized that while solitude had its merits, The support and companionship of others could help him navigate even the darkest of nights. The experience taught him the power of community and the resilience of the human spirit. As the town recovered, the events of that haunting night became etched into their collective memory. They served as a reminder of the strength found in unity, the courage to face the unknown, and the unbreakable spirit of a community that refused to be defined by fear. Oliver sat on the living room couch, his parents' words echoing in his mind. "We'll be back in a week, Oliver. Take care of the house and yourself while we're gone," they had said before leaving for their vacation. At 14 years old, Oliver was thrilled to have the house to himself for a whole week. Little did he know that this exciting experience would soon turn into a nightmarish ordeal. The first few days were enjoyable. Oliver indulged in his favorite activities, watching movies, playing video games, and eating snacks without any restrictions. However, as the days went by, a strange uneasiness settled in. Oliver couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched. One evening, while engrossed in a horror movie, Oliver heard a faint tapping sound coming from upstairs. He paused the movie, straining his ears to listen. The tapping continued intermittently, growing louder with each passing moment. Oliver's heart raced, and he slowly made his way upstairs, his palms sweaty with apprehension. As he reached the top of the staircase, the tapping sound seemed to be coming from his parents' bedroom. Oliver pushed the door open cautiously, revealing the dimly lit room. To his horror, he saw the windows slightly ajar, curtains swaying gently in the breeze. Oliver knew for certain that he had closed it earlier that day. Fear gripped him, but he mustered up the courage to investigate further. He walked toward the window and peered outside, scanning the darkened surroundings. Just as he was about to retreat, he noticed a shadowy figure lurking in the bushes. Panic set in, and Oliver hurriedly closed the window, securing it as tightly as possible. With his heart pounding, Oliver returned downstairs, contemplating what he had just witnessed. He couldn't shake off the feeling that someone had been in his house, observing his every move. The thought sent shivers down his spine. The next day, Oliver decided to confide in his neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman known for her friendly nature. He knocked on her door and poured out the details of his eerie experience. Mrs. Thompson listened attentively, concern etched on her face. "My dear Oliver," she said, "you must take this seriously. We've had reports of break-ins in our neighborhood recently. It's essential to keep yourself safe. I'll inform the local authorities, and they'll keep a watchful eye on your house. In the meantime, stay vigilant." Oliver thanked Mrs. Thompson for her advice and returned home with a renewed sense of caution. That night, unable to shake off his fears, he decided to set up a makeshift security system using his laptop and a few webcams. The cameras would provide him with a sense of security and a way to monitor the house while he slept. Days turned into nights, and Oliver's anxiety only intensified. He continued to hear strange noises, footsteps, whispers, and occasional creaking sounds. He would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, as nightmares haunted his dreams. One night, as Oliver was monitoring the live feed from the webcams, he noticed movement near the back entrance. His heart skipped a beat as he saw a shadowy figure attempting to pick the lock. Panic consumed him, and he quickly dialed the emergency helpline. 911. "What's your emergency?" A calm voice answered. Oliver's voice trembled as he explained the situation, pleading for immediate assistance. The operator assured him that help was on the way and advised him to lock himself in his room until the police arrived. Oliver followed the instructions, locking his bedroom door and huddling in the corner. Minutes felt like hours as he anxiously waited for the sound of sirens approaching his house. Finally, the distant wail of police cars grew louder, bringing a glimmer of hope amidst the fear. Moments later, Oliver heard footsteps echoing through the house, followed by urgent voices. The police had arrived. With a mixture of relief and apprehension, he cautiously opened his bedroom door, revealing the concerned faces of the officers. After a thorough search of the premises, the police found no signs of an intruder. Oliver felt a mix of confusion and frustration. Had his imagination played tricks on him? Was it all just a product of his fear and anxiety? The lead officer, Detective Johnson, approached Oliver with a compassionate smile. "Son, it's natural to feel scared when you're home alone, especially after hearing about recent break-ins. We couldn't find any evidence of an intruder, but we'll keep an eye on your house as a precautionary measure. If you notice anything suspicious again, don't hesitate to call us." Oliver nodded, grateful for the support of the police. Although he couldn't explain the noises and the shadowy figure he had seen, he felt a sense of reassurance knowing that someone was looking out for him. Over the next few nights, Oliver's fears gradually subsided as the police presence in the neighborhood became more noticeable. Patrol cars would pass by his house regularly, and officers would wave or flash their headlights, signifying their presence. With this newfound sense of security, Oliver began to regain control over his life. He focused on his hobbies, met up with friends, and even managed to enjoy a peaceful night's sleep. However, the mystery of the strange occurrences remained unsolved in his mind. One day, while browsing the local news online, Oliver stumbled upon an article about a notorious burglar who had recently been apprehended. The article described how the burglar had targeted homes in various neighborhoods, eluding the authorities for months. As Oliver read the details, a chilling realization struck him. The modus operandi of the burglar matched the peculiar events he had experienced. Could it be that the intruder had been aware of Oliver's parents' absence and had specifically targeted their house? Determined to find answers, Oliver reached out to Detective Johnson, sharing his suspicions and the details of his encounters. The detective took his concerns seriously and promised to investigate further. Days turned into weeks, and Oliver continued his daily routine, but with a heightened sense of caution. Detective Johnson kept him updated on the progress of the investigation, assuring him that they were diligently working to uncover the truth. Finally, one evening, Oliver received a call from Detective Johnson. His voice sounded triumphant yet grave. "Oliver, we've made a breakthrough in the case. We apprehended the burglar, and during the interrogation, he confessed to breaking into your house while you were home alone. He had been watching your house for days, waiting for the perfect opportunity." Oliver's heart raced as he listened to the detective's words. The burglar had targeted him specifically. The motives remained unclear, but Oliver's intuition told him that it was more than a random act. He thanked Detective Johnson for his perseverance and vowed to remain vigilant. The experience had taught Oliver a valuable lesson about the importance of home security and personal safety. He no longer took his surroundings for granted and understood the significance of trusting his instincts. As the days passed, Oliver regained his peace of mind, but he knew he would never forget the haunting events that had unfolded during his time home alone. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly returned to normal for Oliver. The burglar was apprehended, and with increased security measures in the neighborhood, the sense of safety was gradually restored. However, Oliver couldn't shake off the lingering uneasiness that the incident had left behind. With his parents' return from their vacation, Oliver decided to confide in them about the terrifying events that had unfolded during their absence. They listened attentively, their expressions filled with concern and remorse for not anticipating the potential dangers. "We're so sorry, Oliver," his mother said, tears welling up in her eyes. "We never imagined something like this could happen. We should have discussed safety measures and prepared you better for staying home alone." Oliver forgave his parents, understanding that they, too, had learned from the experience. The family made a commitment to establish open communication and prioritize home security moving forward. Months turned into years, and the memory of that fateful week slowly faded. Oliver grew older, more mature, and wiser. The incident had left an indelible mark on him. shaping his perspective on personal safety and the importance of vigilance. As he ventured into adulthood, Oliver pursued a career in criminal justice, inspired by his encounter with the burglar. His goal was to protect others and ensure that no one would have to experience the fear he had endured. Oliver's determination paid off, and he became a respected detective, dedicated to investigating and preventing crimes. He tirelessly worked to make his community a safer place, driven by the memory of his own harrowing experience. Years later, while attending a community safety awareness event, Oliver spotted a familiar face in the crowd. It was Detective Johnson, the person who had supported him during his ordeal. They exchanged warm greetings and began discussing the progress they had made since the incident. As they talked, Oliver's attention was drawn to a young teenager listening intently to their conversation. The teenager approached, a mix of curiosity and admiration in his eyes. "Are you Oliver?" the teenager asked, a hint of excitement in his voice. Oliver nodded, a smile forming on his face. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" The teenager extended his hand. "I've heard about your story, about how you faced your fears and became a detective. It's inspiring. I want to make a difference too, just like you." Oliver shook the teenager's hand, feeling a surge of hope and fulfillment. He realized that his own experience had the power to inspire and empower others. It was a reminder that even in the face of darkness, there was always a glimmer of light. With renewed determination, Oliver looked at the teenager and said, "Believe in yourself and follow your passion, young one. You have the power to create positive change. Together, we can make our community safer, one step at a time." As Oliver continued his work in the field of criminal justice, he made it his mission to educate and empower individuals, especially young ones, to be proactive in their own safety. He conducted workshops, gave speeches, and shared his story to raise awareness and inspire others. Dustin's heart raced as he watched his parents' car disappear down the road. They had left for a weekend getaway, leaving him home alone for the first time. At 16 years old, he was thrilled to have the house to himself. The possibilities seemed endless, and he couldn't wait to enjoy his freedom. As night fell, Dustin settled into the living room, engrossed in a movie. The wind howled outside, creating an eerie atmosphere. He tried to shake off the unease creeping up his spine, reminding himself that it was just his imagination. However, a sudden knock at the front door shattered his concentration, and he jumped in surprise. He cautiously approached the door and peered through the peephole. Outside stood a middle-aged man, dressed in a worn-out jacket, his face obscured by the dim porch light. The stranger's presence sent a shiver down Dustin's spine, and he hesitated before unlocking the door. "Hello, young man," the stranger said with a forced smile. "I was wondering if you could spare some change for a bus ticket. I seem to have lost my wallet, and it's quite cold out here." Dustin's heart raced, unsure whether to trust the man or not. Something about his demeanor didn't feel right. He remembered his parents' advice to be cautious of strangers, especially when he was home alone. But he also didn't want to be rude or unhelpful. "I'm sorry, sir," Dustin replied, his voice quivering slightly. "I don't have any cash on me. Maybe you should try asking someone else." The stranger's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "Oh, that's a shame," he said, his voice turning menacing. "But maybe I'll just come in and warm up for a bit. It's awfully chilly out here." Dustin's heart raced, and his instincts screamed at him to close the door and lock it. With trembling hands, he started to push the door shut, but the stranger's foot shot forward, preventing the door from closing completely. Fear surged through Dustin's veins as he realized the danger he was in. With a surge of adrenaline, he summoned his strength and slammed the door shut with all his might, catching the stranger's foot in the process. The man let out a yelp of pain and stumbled backward, giving Dustin the chance to quickly lock the door. Breathing heavily, Dustin leaned against the door, his mind racing. He had narrowly avoided a potential threat, but he knew he couldn't let his guard down. Who was that man, and why did he try to force his way into the house? As Dustin contemplated his next move, he heard a faint scratching sound coming from upstairs. Fear gripped him once more, but he knew he had to investigate. With cautious steps, he made his way up the creaky staircase, each step echoing in the silent house. The scratching sound grew louder as he approached his parents' bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and Dustin could see a sliver of darkness beyond. Summoning his courage, he pushed the door open, and his heart nearly stopped. In the dimly lit bedroom, Dustin's eyes widened in terror as he saw a figure hunched over his parents' dresser. The person's back was turned towards him, their attention completely absorbed in whatever they were doing. Dustin's mind raced, trying to process the situation. He mustered all his bravery and spoke in a firm voice. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my parents' room?" The figure froze, then slowly turned around, revealing a disheveled appearance and wild, bloodshot eyes. It was an unkempt man, his face etched with desperation and despair. He held a small, silver object in his hand, a jewelry box. I'm sorry," the man stammered, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean to intrude. I was just looking for something valuable. I thought no one was home." Dustin's fear turned to a mixture of pity and anger. It was clear that this man was desperate, driven to desperate measures by circumstances unknown to him. But that didn't excuse his actions. "Put the box down and step away," Dustin commanded, his voice filled with authority. "I'm calling the police." The man's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route. He hesitated for a moment, then dropped the box and bolted towards the open window. In a swift movement, he leaped out, disappearing into the night. Dustin stood there, his heart pounding, as he watched the intruder flee. He knew he had made the right decision to stand up for himself and protect his home. But the incident left him feeling shaken, realizing that danger could lurk just beyond the walls of his seemingly safe house. The night grew quieter, and Dustin took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He picked up the fallen jewelry box, noticing that it contained his mother's treasured necklace. Relief washed over him, knowing that the stolen item was safely back in his possession. As the days passed, Dustin's nerves began to settle, but he couldn't shake off the lingering unease. The incident had made him acutely aware of the vulnerability of being home alone. He made a conscious effort to take precautions, reinforcing the locks, installing security cameras, and staying connected with his neighbors. Over time, Dustin's parents returned home, unaware of the events that had unfolded during their absence. He debated whether to tell them, fearing their worry and guilt. Eventually, he decided to share his experience, emphasizing the importance of safety measures and open communication. From that day forward, Dustin's home was never quite the same. It became a fortress of security, but also a sanctuary for his family, a place where they could feel protected and at ease. And while the memory of that terrifying night remained, it served as a constant reminder to cherish the safety and comfort of home.